I'm Jesse Weber. Tough questions for investigators Friday as attorneys in the Alex Murdaugh murder trial try to persuade a jury that they know the truth of what happened on that June 9th in 2021. Murdaugh is accused of killing his wife Maggie and his son Paul, possibly to try to direct attention away from his financial misdeeds. The mother and son were found shot to death on a huge farm property that the Murdaughs own in South Carolina. During Friday's testimony, the prosecution and the defense grilled a South Carolina Law Enforcement Division detective, focusing a lot on the blood that was found on and around the bodies, as well as whether Alex Murdaugh had any blood on him. Now, the detective testified that as far as she could see on the night of, Murdaugh was clean from head to toe. The prosecution seemed to be implying that this meant Murdaugh did not actually try to roll over Maggie and Paul or check for life signs, but the defense, however, used that apparent lack of blood on Murdaugh's body and clothes to say he's not the shooter. During testimony on Friday, the court saw and heard the first interview that Alex Murdaugh had with police inside of a police cruiser at the scene. Now we have some of that hour-and-a-half-long interview for you now.
When I came back here, I mean, I pulled up and I could see him, and, you know, I knew something was bad. I ran out. I knew it was really bad. My boy over there, I could see it was...
Sorry.
And I could see his brain on. And I ran over to Maggie, and actually, I think I tried to turn Paul over first. You know, I tried to turn him over, and I don't know, I figured it out. His cell phone popped out of his pocket. I started to try to do something with it, thinking maybe, but then I put it back down really quickly. Then I went to my wife, and I mean, I could see.
All right, I'm joined by my co-hosts, legal experts Brian Buckmeyer, Terry Austin. Brian, we'll start with you. A lot to sort through today as all of this evidence and the testimony. What did you pick up on?
Yeah, Jesse, so we're all watching the same thing there in the video, trying to gauge whether or not Alex Murdaugh is faking it or truly in distress. But as I listened to the detective's testimony, there was one point in the detective's testimony that stood out to me. Check this out.
You had a meeting and you looked at some photos, I believe crime scene photos and autopsy photos at SLED, correct?
I did. And
you made a mental note and you put it in your record that you noticed a few strands of what appeared to be brown hair, unable to determine the length from the photo in Maggie's hands and fingers, right?
That is correct.
And you thought that possibly was an indication of a struggle, that Maggie had grabbed someone, had their hair in her hands, right?
I didn't say that in my report, no.
Well, so why did you note it in your report?
Because it was an observation.
Yeah, so I know there are a lot of people saying that's potentially dog hair, could be human hair, but that is reasonable doubt. If the prosecution can't explain that away, the defense can harp on that. And again, we always say this, you just need one. If one person can attach their theory of this case within the jury to say, hey, here's a lead they never chased down, Alex Murdaugh is as blonde as they come, it couldn't have been him, that could be something that the defense could really open up in this case.
And Terry, people are wrestling with this case. People have opinions about it. One thing we never talked about is why do you think this trial has attracted such interest from so many people?
You know what? This is an interesting case for a couple of reasons. First of all, the fall from grace. It is a story that people are excited and interested, sadly enough, to hear about. You know, generations of solicitors in his family. It's the same as, you know, the district attorney. And the fact that He himself is an attorney in the community, and now he's behind bars. So I think that's one reason. The other issue here is it is so convoluted. The fact that he is addicted to drugs, the fact that so many people have died, I don't want to say under his watch, but around him. Gloria Satterfield, his housekeeper, this young boy who was found on the street hit by a car and he died. You know, obviously Mallory Beach, the young woman who died in the boat accident when Paul was driving. And now, of course, the murder of his wife and his son, Paul. So I definitely think people are interested in this story because it has so many components and it is such a big, huge fall from grace.
Brian, I'm going to throw this back with you on this because let me just ask you, do you think it's the mystery component too? I mean, the idea of the unsolved mystery. We saw it with Kohberger. We saw it with Gabby Petito. I don't think there's a clear-cut answer here whether or not he did it or not.
Absolutely, Jesse. In a lot of the cases that we follow and the ones that we really dig into, it's not just the guilt that people and we are trying to analyze, but whether or not the prosecution is going to prove their case, whether or not there is some piece of evidence that could go either way. When reasonable minds can disagree on a case, that's what I think becomes so fascinating, especially when you're talking about the criminal justice system, how they're going to prove, for example, in this case, whether or not Alex Murdaugh was in the area that the prosecution believed him to be. You're going to have to go into the science of cell phone pinging and whether or not there's enough towers close by. Why is there no blood on his clothes? He says that he's there treating them, but we're watching him in there in the front seat of the police car, and he seems to be as clean as the day that he probably walked into that area and that scene. And so those facts, those issues, those legal arguments, and the fact that this person comes from a dynasty, as you said, a dynasty of prosecutors, and Terry pointed out, fall from grace. There's so many elements to this case. There's so many murders and mysteries that no one can keep their eyes off of it.
Unfortunately, it is very unique for all the wrong reasons. Stay with us for gavel-to-gavel coverage of this very high-profile trial. You can check out our links to videos, live streams from the courtroom, all on lawandcrime.com. And welcome back, everybody. You may recall the ongoing case of doomsday cult mom Lori Vallow Daybell out in Idaho. Well, in a new twist, her defense team is trying to get the case thrown out altogether, saying time is up for the prosecution. Lori Vallow Daybell is being tried alongside her husband Chad Daybell for the deaths of Lori's two children, J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan. The death of Chad's first wife, Tammy Daybell, was also included in the charges. In a new defense motion to dismiss the case, Lori's attorneys claim that the state violated their client's right to a speedy trial. A speedy trial should happen within 6 months of the charges. A new trial date is set for April of this year, but the charges were filed in April of last year. There have been so many delays to this trial, including for Lori's own competency hearings, but her team says even then, she's been behind bars way too long. In total, she'll have spent nearly 1,200 days in jail. A ruling from the judge is currently pending. So, Brian, the Idaho statute for speedy trial says that a case needs to go to trial in 6 months. Her defense team says it's going to be 1,000 days before she goes to trial. That just seems like simple math.
Yeah, unfortunately, Jesse, the most difficult thing for lawyers is just that, simple math. But the way I explain it to people, the right to a speedy trial is not that 6 months exactly the same. The analogy I give is you've never seen an NBA basketball game end in 48 minutes, even though each quarter is only 12 minutes because there's halftime, timeouts, there's commercial breaks, things like that. And throughout the pendency of a case, there's also the stopping and starting of that right to a speedy trial clock. A motion could stop the clock. The pendency evaluation could stop the clock. And so when you talk about 6 months, you have to look in between the gaps in which that time is running. The other question here is, Chad Daybell waived his right to a speedy trial. Lori did not. How does that work out when one co-defendant waives but the other does not and their cases are joined together? Every state interprets this right under the Sixth Amendment differently. It's just going to be a matter of how this very complex math plays out when you think about when the clock starts and stops.
Don't worry, this case isn't complicated enough. Just add this on, no big deal. So Terry, you know what I'm going to ask you. Any possibility this could actually happen? Any chance her case is going to be dismissed?
Absolutely not. Listen, these are extremely serious charges. The fact that both of them have been accused of murder of the children, JJ and Tylee, and there's no question that they're not going to get out. And Lori asking, I think this motion is frankly ludicrous. The fact that because there's been a delay, she's caused most of those delays. And she's saying, oh, I think the case should be dismissed because of the delays. That's not going to fly with the judge. And true, Judge Boyce has said he's a little bit concerned about the fact that she's been behind bars for so long. But I don't think he's going to look at that as an opportunity to dismiss the case. One of the things Brian said that I think is really true, perhaps this case should not have been joined in the first place. Chad is asking for different relief. He's saying, let's postpone till further notice, basically. And she is saying, oh, I want a speedy trial. That in and of itself, I think, could give the judge some opportunity to think about, even now, separating these two cases, because their interests are not the same. And in my opinion, they've never been the same. So we'll see what happens.
It's a textbook example. A lot of times people wonder, why do trials, they don't happen until so many years later? Kind of seeing it here. Brian, Terry, thanks so much. Everyone out there, thank you so much. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.